Next curve.
Hey everyone, welcome to Next Curve's reThink webcast and our Analyst Corner. I'm Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst at Next Curve, and welcome to this episode of Silicon Futures, where we cover the stuff happening in the semiconductor industry that matter, and only the stuff that matters. And today I have a very special guest, Karl Freund. Did I pronounce it? Freund?
No, it's Freund. Just like Sigmund Freud, but you add an N.
You know, I just wanted to, respect your German traditional, culture and where your name came from and pronounce it semi-correctly. But hey, everyone, Karl is the founder and principal analyst at Cambrian AI Research LLC, and he's a leading analyst covering the semiconductor industry. And I had a pleasure of bumping into him at Snapdragon Summit 2023. We had a great time. He has a wonderful wife who is absolutely she's just so entertaining and pleasant. It was great to spend time with Karl, and it's really great to have you on this show for the first time. So why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself a bit more and share a bit about Cambrian AI research and your areas of focus.
That'd be great. Pleasure to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed time with you at Snapdragon Summit. We'll see you there next year, I'm sure. So my background is I've been a marketing executive at companies like IBM and Hewlett Packard and AMD, a couple of startups, almost always with a chip-enabled story to tell, right? Whether it was IBM Power or AMD Epic or what have you. So I've always been involved in chips. I'm not a semiconductor guy by education. I'm a computer scientist. But a long time ago, somebody at Hewlett Packard said, you're a pretty good programmer, but I think you're a better talker. Let me loan you to marketing for a while and go talk, right? So I've been in marketing now for a long, long time. Cambrian AI, a firm I started about 2 years ago after leaving More Insights and Strategy. I just want to do my own gig. And Cambrian AI, most of the semiconductor companies are our clients. Mm-hmm. We try to provide, honestly, objective perspective on these companies, and it's pretty much the who's who of who's building AI chips, both public companies and quite a few private companies trying to scratch out their gold mine in what's becoming absolutely a Cambrian explosion of AI.
And speaking of Cambrian, is that why you named your company Cambrian? Is that whole explosion where life?
Yeah. Actually, I'll be honest. I'm always transparent. I stole it from Jensen Huang, CEO of Nvidia. Yeah, because one year at GTC, he started talking about the Cambrian explosion in AI models. It was long before large language models ever hit the scene. Yeah. And he was talking about the explosion of models, and I thought, well, there's also an explosion of chips going after you, Jensen, that are going to really struggle, but they're coming after you with kind of the same pitch to the investment community of a customized AI chip. They haven't done very well, but the name kind of stuck with me, and I thought, let's talk about the Cambrian AI explosion, and that's why I named the firm that.
Okay, cool. Well, you and I think, famously sometimes don't see eye to eye, and I'm looking forward to having some great debates with you. The reason why I wanted to do this collaboration with you is because debate is good, right?
Yeah.
I think audiences get a lot out of different points of view, and I think you and I sort of proved to ourselves at Snapdragon Summit that we have some really interesting divergent points of view that I think lend toward a good synthesis of stimulating discussion that I think will help our audience, and I'm looking forward to doing this with you. And I suggest that we get started. And
let's do it.
Why don't we get things kicked off with let's talk about AI. It's a focus of your firm. It's something that I observe as well in the next curve research. But let's talk about AI computing. Number one, sort of what it is, what's the state of that computing, especially as it pertains to the data center, because I think that's where a lot of the excitement is at the moment. And, maybe let's share our thoughts on what's driving that change. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to start since you're the guest.
Okay, and then you can pick at the nits you don't like.
Pick it apart.
We had so much fun arguing and debating in a friendly way. I love it.
Yeah.
Unlike the current political landscape where everybody hates each other, and this is good for everybody. There's multiple sides to the story. Yeah. So the AI was interesting when I first started doing AI and Analyst. When I left AMD, I was running marketing for what became Epic, and what now became the MI300. So I went off my own looking at AI. And back then it was interesting. It was more of research. Telling the difference between a cat and a dog is kind of hard to monetize that. But at the same time, the hyperscalers were able to monetize it as people conducted research and produced really good early artificial intelligence. A lot of that's still being used. So, for example, in chip design, we're still using reinforcement learning, probably will for a long time.
Sure.
An older technique that's quite computationally intensive, but could actually help you lay out a chip. 10 to the 10,000th. That's a big number. 10 to the 10,000th ways of laying out a chip, and each one will produce a different power, area, cost, performance, and time to market characteristics. And so it's really cool stuff. Then along came ChatGPT. And of course, everybody knows it caused a Cambrian explosion. And I saw something the other day. Maybe I'll share it on our next call.
Sure.
It was a graph of the data center spend globally on AMD, Intel, and Nvidia and others. Okay, so you imagine this graph's going along, and Intel's kind of declining, and AMD's kind of increasing, and Nvidia's coming along, and suddenly it hockey sticks.
Right.
And this firm believes that Nvidia last quarter accounted for, I think it was 68% of all semiconductor sales into data centers. Let that sink in. 68% of all revenue going to semiconductors for data center processors was garnered by Nvidia. That's huge, and of course their stock reflects that. What the reason of those explosions is for the first time we have a new way of communicating with data. It's really about finding insights with data without having to sit down and write a program. You just ask it questions, and it will give you wonderful answers, which may be bullshit, but in general, they're pretty good and very, very useful. So that's the explosion we're seeing, both in the data center. That'll go to the edge. That's kind of a wild promise area that's coming up in the next couple of years. And as far as where we're going, I think we're going from asking data questions to asking it to act. Okay, so like right now, you can go and you can ask OpenTable, and they use AI now. You can ask OpenTable, find me 4 restaurants in the area that have availability on Thursday at 5:00 that serve, Asian fusion foods, and it'll give you the answers. That's nice. What would be really better is you can then say, great, make a reservation for 4 at 7:30. That's not there yet. So the releasing control to AIs to actually conduct actions on our behalf, I think is the next frontier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is already and has been happening, because if we look at a lot of the emerging, so the chip sales aside, right? Because no doubt,
I never set that aside. That's
well, we have for a moment, if we set that aside, where I do want to note that a lot of Nvidia's sales are for systems. Right, it's not just a GPU or a component or a socket. It's like literally the HEX H100, this 70, 80 pound device. That is what, I mean, it's an entire integrated system. And, Jensen Huang makes it a point almost every single call that this is a highly engineered, system with thousands of parts that are integrated into it and optimized up and down, right, including the software. But
and networking and everything.
Yeah, but you're making a great point. But I think we're also seeing a lot of this control frameworks to allow this control in the form of these chatbot frameworks. So you have the co-pilots from Microsoft. You have the AI Duet from Google, and then now most recently AWS, you have the Amazon Q, right? And so I mean we're getting a lot closer to it, and I think generative AI, a big driver, especially in 2023, and interest in what a lot of folks are calling accelerated computing and accelerated infrastructure. I think one of the things that you and I kind of, in terms of looking at what's happening right now, where you and I kind of diverge in thinking a bit, and you can confirm whether or not this is true. I'm trying to make things a little controversial, right?
Not hard.
Is that, a lot of what I'm seeing is that we're kind of in the early days in terms of a lot of the activity in the application of these new AI capabilities and resources is largely POC. The other thing that I'm noticing is a lot of the selling through of these chips is going toward businesses, primarily hyperscalers, that, as well as, oddly, OEMs like HP, Dell, who are providing these AI as a service offerings, right? And so a lot of stuff is as a service. It's not actually landing in an enterprise data center per se. I think a bulk of it is being consumed by service providers who are looking to, now monetize. Now that's the big question, monetization going forward. But no doubt, exciting times, and it's shipping a lot of boxes. It's shipping a lot of silicon into these data centers. Anyways, what's your reaction to?
My reaction, I think you're in the large correct at this time. I think what will change is that AI, large language models are fantastic, but when they really produce economic benefit to their customers is when you fine tune them on your company's data.
Yeah.
And that may not be data you're willing to send to the cloud. And even if you are, once you have a working, fine-tuned model for, let's say, one of the three main areas of profitability right now, which are, taking cost out, labor out, providing customer care, and in coding. Okay, those are three of the main areas of high profit, low-hanging fruit. And once you get that running, you're going to look at the cost of doing something like this in Azure and AWS and Google and go, whoa, this is really expensive. And so more and more people will go to a hybrid model where you do the development on the cloud. You then stand up your own AI resources. And by the way, that's becoming quite simple because the system vendors, the OEMs and Nvidia, AMD and Intel, not so much yet, but they're producing their own systems. I mean, they introduced a complete optimized rack at AWS last couple of weeks ago what was amazing. And the entire rack is optimized. So you're going to do better than NVIDIA? I don't think so. Yeah. So the deployment, the procurement and deployment and management of those infrastructures becoming pretty simple, plug and play, and much lower cost than using cloud services once you reach a level of required throughput where you can keep those things busy. Otherwise, you stay in the cloud.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with you. I thought you were going to say something contentious, and adversarial, but obviously not.
Maybe our
Oh,
next
those are
call we
great
can get into the
thoughts.
profitability, because I know that's one of our largest areas. Just for the audience, I think AI is going to produce mountains of cash, and not just for Nvidia, but for the users of the technology. And Leonard, you may have a different view of that, but probably a conversation for another time.
I think it's more of a yeah. Let's talk about set that up for a different we'll create a bit of a mid session cliffhanger. But let's get under the hood. Okay, let's focus the lens on H2 of 2023. There's a lot of activity going. In fact, I would say H2 is just where the insanity happens in the semiconductor industry. I mean, we saw crazy announcements related to AI from Nvidia, from AMD. Obviously they're going toe to toe to take pole position or even win I don't know if there's ever winning the race. There's always a pole position. We have them duking it out. I mean, we have Intel, just was it last week or a couple of weeks ago? It was last week, right? Yeah.
Last week.
Introducing, Gaudi 3 and, 5th gen Xeon. A lot of stuff going on. What are your thoughts, man? What are your thoughts?
Well, it was a crazy, it's like Andrew Feldman, CEO of Cerebras, says it quite well. He says AI was interesting research, and suddenly there's this massive dump truck of cash poured into a table, just overwhelming amounts of cash. Everybody rushed in. And luckily for AMD and Intel, they were kind of at the verge of producing competitive. I mean, for the first time. I mean, there's been no duking. There's been no duking. Nvidia owns this market well in excess of 90% of the data center market, especially for large language models, for generative AI. There's nobody to compete with them. Suddenly you have two competitors, and the kerfuffle between AMD and Nvidia, which I probably helped contribute to with my Forbes article about it. It's funny. AMD said, we're the best. And Nvidia says, not so fast. Let me show you something. And they showed some benchmarks that just devastated AMD. AMD came out and said, well, we've improved our performance a lot in the last 2 weeks. And they crushed Nvidia. And there's lots of debate about, it was 8-bit, is it 16-bit, and so forth. But for the first time, we're actually seeing healthy competition between multiple vendors. Today, 2, and with Gaudi 3, it'll be 3. And Cerebras is in the wings with an amazing platform with their wafer scale engine. So you've really got 4 hardware vendors right now, that are vying for a piece of this market. As the market approaches $70 billion, you don't have to be a winner. You just have to play to give good return to shareholders.
That's great perspective. And I think, one of the things that I think is really interesting is kind of this back and forth between not open AI, the nonprofit. I'm talking about open space AI versus basically CUDA, right? Or proprietary stacks and architectures, and how that narrative is being played out as all of these different parties are now starting to compete and try to jockey for positioning, especially against Nvidia. And I think a lot of them are very vocal and not too subtle about poking. I don't know if it's really it's prodding the giant regarding their quote unquote proprietary stack. But I mean, from Intel to AMD to even the hyperscalers, all promoting open frameworks.
Well, if you're going to build your own chip, like Microsoft Maya or AWS Trainium and Inferentia, you really have to have an open stack. And so everybody can contribute to it. Everybody can help optimize it. make it better for the community, and at a nonprofit motive for the software layers. Okay. This then extends to the foundational models. You have for-profit closed models like GPT-3, 3, 5, and 4. Those are closed. Yeah. You don't even know how many parameters are in GPT-4. And then you've got open models like Llama 2, which everybody's jumping on. So here's the deal. If you stay open, you're going to be competing on a increasingly commoditized space in let's say 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
If you keep it closed, then and by it I mean this applies to both OpenAI and to Nvidia. If you have something that's closed, you can optimize it better. It can produce better economic benefit to the customer, but it's a fur-lined trap. Once you go in there, it's very hard to get out because you're dependent on things like TensorRT LLM, which optimizes for both training and inference, primarily inference now, for the NVIDIA hardware stack using the CUDA software stack. Yeah. Once you go there, you can't go back. And so it's this freedom and flexibility on one side, which is all great. Yeah. And then it's I need an optimized solution. Why would I leave 80% of my performance on the table? I paid $30,000 for this chip. I'm going to put it to work. Right. And I want it to work as well as possible. Both are absolutely viable arguments. Yeah. They both have a lot of credence and value. It's just different values. And I think both will continue to be successful.
Yeah, and I'm kind of noticing that there are these the stacks are becoming a little bit more hybrid because when you look at what Microsoft's doing with Maya, what Amazon has done with Inferential and Trainium. I mean, those are like they're custom. This custom silicon, and at certain points in the stack, it's going more toward walled gardenish, if you will, semi-custom, if you will. But then with certain elements of the stack being open and providing that broader exposure to different frameworks. And it seems like everyone's taking a slightly different approach with some commonality, right? And I think a lot of it is, especially for the hyperscalers, let's call it the non-Nvidia players, it's largely on the upper ends of the stack. But I think there's a clear recognition, to your point, that the custom silicon, that optimization and integration at certain, especially at the infrastructure layer, and that interface to software is important for differentiation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking with AMD yesterday, and they were saying, I said, look, are people willing to optimize? Yes, they are, as long as it's on open software. Yeah, and there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah, and that's dangerous for NVIDIA. At the same time, if you're going to build let's say you're going to fine tune a model, you can probably start with something like Llama 2. So you start with an open platform, and now you're going to pick the hardware you're going to do the fine tuning on and the inference on. Right now, to not select NVIDIA could be a career limiting decision. Okay.
Yeah, this is something that we should probably talk about in a separate episode, because it really is super interesting. How the market will play out, which segments open versus proprietary or optimized versus open, and loosely optimized will play out, right? Because we've seen this kind of thing in Open RAN, right? Where people thought, Open RAN's going to basically take over the world. Well, wait a minute. It's integrated, highly optimized stack approach, oftentimes proprietary, has a lot of gravity in a market, and it positions a vendor in a certain way. We should definitely talk about it, but we won't spend too much more time. Another teaser. So, hey, there's another topic we can talk about very soon. This is cool. I like this.
We're going to have a lot of fun with this. All right. This is great.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about really quickly and get your thoughts on is I know there's a lot of focus on the silicon, the GPU, the AI compute node, but interconnect. That's another thing that
that's huge.
A lot about. I mean, what are some of your thoughts there, really quickly?
It's changing rapidly. So if you would have asked me that 6 months ago, what I was telling investors, a lot of my work is with investors, is I would say AWS has a problem. They will not adopt NVLink. And so because they've got their own fabric and they want to control that. And there's some NIH there, but there's also some good business reasons. But at the end of the day, it was really hard to build a large AI model on AWS because they couldn't support it. And then along comes AWS reInvent 2 weeks ago, and they said, here's Jensen Huang. And Jensen walks on stage and says,
everybody's stage, man.
he owns everybody's stage. And he says, hey, here's what we're standing up at AWS. Okay. We're standing up the industry's first Grace Hopper supercomputer, not in an Nvidia facility, which is the normal way they do this, but we're doing it at AWS. And not only that, we're going to, instead of standing up our own, and they've done this again and again, where they build their own supercomputer facilities for the NVIDIA engineers to do research on, to build their next chip, right? Because don't forget, AI builds really good AI. And instead, they're going to do it using AWS, and they're designing an infrastructure specifically for that. And what they did was combine the best of AWS networking, to your point, and the best of NVIDIA networking, and they did the GPU interconnect all with NVLink, and the node-to-node interconnect all with the AWS Elastic Fabric, and give customers the best of both worlds, and not make them choose. Because before, if you really wanted to use NVLink to get, and there's a lot of advantages to NVLink. You can treat hundreds of GPUs as a single GPU from a software standpoint. You couldn't do that at AWS. Now you can, and it's all because of the networking. And this area is going to change again fairly soon. There's a little company called Infabrica in the Bay Area that's producing a chip which aggregates all the silicon on the back end, the network end of a GPU cluster.
Oh, okay.
And it provides CXL access and eliminates all the PCIe and all that, and PCI switches and all that. All goes away. That all goes away, and this aggregates all that infrastructure into a single chip. Fabulous. If I can invest in them, I would. But I never invest in my clients anyway, so they're not a client. But anyway,
there you go.
But anyway, all that stuff, we are not at the end state. We never will be at a stable state. The infrastructure itself is now the next area ripe for innovation, for cost reduction and performance improvement, and improving ease of use.
Yeah. Wow. So it sounds like it's not a DPU; it's beyond a DPU. Right.
Yeah, it's beyond the DPUs. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because it could obviate the need. What's that?
Let's coin something.
Well, we should. It's interesting. NVIDIA saw this. They liked it so much they invested in it. Yeah. And you're right. It's absolutely contrary to a DPU, as I get it. So, do you need both? I don't know. Depends on how successful this thing could be. But NVIDIA invested in them. So,
interesting.
That's that one of the many companies they're using their cash to invest in. NVIDIA is going broad, right?
Yeah,
and they're doing that through investments in a lot of startups.
It's almost like every single event that I go to, Jensen hops on stage, has his little cameo. He's like everywhere.
He could show up right here on the screen. He could just pop up right here on the screen any minute now. He's got the magic.
Could. I think they're partners with Zoom as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, Karl, this has been great. It's a really great discussion.
Enjoyed talking with you. All
Yeah.
right, let's get it.
Good
We've
stuff.
got some debates we need to have. They're
Yeah,
healthy debates.
I'll have to take notes. See, all of this is like pretty unscripted. We just kind of jumped on, and
Yeah.
I think if there's any magic to be made, it was just made here. I really enjoyed speaking with you, Carl, and thanks for joining me in this discussion. And
Well, Leonard, always a pleasure to meet you and talk with you. There's a lot of events coming up next year. You going to GTC? Are you going to GTC?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe we should do one of these at GTC. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk to Michael about that. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to have you on again. There's a lot of stuff what we need to talk about, and I really appreciate you sharing your insights and perspective to the Next Curve audience.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
It's super fun, and I think it's very informative because it was informative for me. I suppose it's going to be informative for the audience as well. And so why don't you do this? Carl, take a moment to tell our audience how they can get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, sure.
Tap into your research.
Yeah, you bet. You can pretty much follow me on Forbes. I publish hundreds of articles on Forbes. I get about 1 million page views on Forbes. That's my primary way to reach my audience. But some people don't want to pay for Forbes. That's fine. Those articles show up on Cambrian-AI.com after 5 days.
Okay.
They just automatically come over to Cambrian, so you can look at our work there. I also have videos that I do as well. I call Cambrian AI Visions, where I interviewed everybody. I interview CEOs and CTOs from a wide variety of companies. I did a really funny one with Andrew Feldman, excuse me, last week. You might enjoy watching.
Yeah. Check it out. Great.
Yeah, and then for investors. I'm actually going to be launching a new investment service next year. So, because I spent a lot of my time talking with investors, and I thought I need to find a way to make this more accessible to my investment clients. And so investors will keep an eye open for new services coming from Cambrian AI.
Okay, awesome. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. And remember, please subscribe to the Next Curve YouTube channel. The easiest thing is to subscribe to Next Curve's research portal at www.next-curve.com for a constant diet of the tech and industry insights that matter. And so happy holidays to all. Happy holidays to you, Carl, and your wonderful family. I hope you get a lot of ski days in next year.
I hope so. We need snow.
Yeah, I would say I hope you get a lot this year, but we don't have much left this year. So, but until next time, keep it real, and we'll have Carl back on very soon to talk about.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Leonard. Let's do this again.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right.
Well, all right. Happy holidays. Take care.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.